I stood in our bedroom, wearing a simple navy dress I thought was appropriate for the evening. The fabric was good quality. The cut was flattering. And I felt confident until my husband Brandon walked in and looked at me like I was something he needed to scrape off his shoe. His face twisted with disgust, and then he said the words that would change everything between us. He told me I was too plain for his wealthy colleagues at the club. He said I would embarrass him. He said I should stay home tonight, that I needed to stay in my lane because I wasn't elegant enough for his world. His voice was cold, dismissive, like he was talking to a stranger instead of his wife of 6 years. I looked at myself in the mirror, really looked, and for a moment I felt so small I could barely breathe. But I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just quietly agreed. I smiled at him, that same smile I'd been giving him for months whenever he criticized me, and I said, sure. Something shifted inside me in that moment, something fundamental and irreversible, but he didn't notice. He was already walking away. I watched him leave, his expensive cologne lingering in the air after he was gone. I could hear him downstairs, grabbing his keys, checking his reflection one more time in the hallway mirror. The front door opened and closed. His car started in the driveway, and then silence. I sat down on the edge of our bed, still wearing that navy dress. My hands were shaking, but not from sadness, from something else entirely. This wasn't the first time Brandon had dismissed me, belittled me, made me feel like I was somehow less than human. But it was the cruelest, it was the most direct, and it was the final straw. I thought back to how we met 7 years ago at a business conference in Austin. I was a project manager at a growing tech startup, confident in my work, proud of what I'd accomplished. Brandon was a consultant presenting on business strategy. He seemed charming, ambitious, driven. We talked over coffee, then dinner, then late into the night about our dreams and goals. He told me he came from money, but wanted to make his own way in the world. He said he valued authenticity over pretension. I believed him. After we married, things changed gradually, so slowly I didn't notice at first. He joined an exclusive business club called the Sterling Reserve, a private establishment where wealthy professionals networked over $1,000 bottles of wine and made deals that shaped the city's economy. Membership cost $50,000 annually. He started spending more time there, coming home later and later, talking endlessly about the connections he was making, the opportunities that were opening up. And he started criticizing me. My clothes were too casual. My hair was too simple. My laugh was too loud. I was too common, he said. Not refined enough. I needed to understand that his world required a certain level of sophistication that I apparently lacked. I tried to adjust. I bought nicer clothes. I styled my hair differently. I modulated my voice, made myself smaller, quieter. It was never enough. He always found something else to pick apart. Tonight, sitting alone in our bedroom, I realized I was done trying, done shrinking, done apologizing for existing. I stood up and walked to his home office. He kept his laptop there, the one he used for personal matters. I knew his password. It was his mother's maiden name, which he'd never bothered to change despite my suggestions about security. The irony wasn't lost on me. The laptop opened easily. I navigated to his messages, his emails, his text threads. My hands were steady now, my mind clear, and what I found made my blood run cold. There was a group chat with his club friends. Months and months of messages. I started scrolling, reading, my heart pounding harder with every word. When his friends asked about his personal life, about whether he was seeing anyone seriously, Brandon told them he was unmarried. In message after message, he described himself as single, as playing the field, as being between relationships. In one thread from 2 months ago, someone asked him directly if he'd ever been married, and he wrote, "I have a situation at home I'm handling. I'll be free soon." His friends responded with laughing emojis, with encouragement, with jokes about him being smart to keep his options open. But the messages got worse. There were photos, dozens of them. Brandon at club events with his arm around different women. Beautiful women in expensive dresses, smiling at the camera. The captions made me feel physically sick. My date tonight, she's more my speed. This one might be a keeper. The club members commented on every photo, congratulating him, asking when he'd make it official with the brunette, or the redhead, or the woman in the silver dress. Brandon responded to all of them, playing along, never once mentioning that he had a wife at home. I kept scrolling, deeper into the archive. And then I found the message from 3 days ago that made everything crystal clear. Brandon had written, "My wife is too unsophisticated for this world. She doesn't understand fine dining, can't discuss art, dresses like she shops at Target. I made a mistake marrying down. Working on my exit strategy." The responses came quickly. "Why did you marry her then?" Brandon's reply, "Her father had some business connections I needed at the time. Served its purpose. Now those connections are mine and she's dead weight." Another friend wrote, "Brutal but honest. When are you pulling the trigger?" "Soon. I need to handle the finances first. Don't want her taking what she doesn't deserve." I read that exchange 3 times, 4 times, until the words burned into my brain. Her father had some business connections I needed. My father, my kind, hard-working father, who had passed away 5 years ago, who had welcomed Brandon into our family, who had trusted him. I kept reading. The mockery continued. His friends made cruel jokes about me, sight unseen. They laughed about Brandon being stuck with someone so beneath his station. One suggested he have an affair to cope with his disappointment. Brandon replied that he was already handling that situation. I ran to the bathroom and vomited. My whole body shook. I gripped the edges of the sink and looked at myself in the mirror. My face was pale, my eyes red, but there was something new there too. Something sharp and focused. Rage, pure, clarifying rage. I went back to the laptop and kept digging. If I was going to do this, I needed to know everything. I found his calendar next. Dinner reservations at expensive restaurants, marked with women's initials, hotel bookings, weekend trips to wine country, when he'd told me he was at business conferences. The lies were systematic, planned, ongoing. Then I opened his financial documents, and my hands started shaking again. When my father died, he left me an inheritance. $400,000. It was everything he'd saved over a lifetime of careful work, of sacrifices, of planning for my future. He wanted me to be secure, to have options, to never have to depend entirely on anyone else. Brandon and I had put the money in a joint account after we married. He said he'd invest it wisely, make it grow. I trusted him. I was working full-time, focused on my career, and I let him handle our finances. Now, looking at the bank statements, I felt like the floor was dropping out from under me. The $400,000 was almost entirely gone. I traced the transactions, withdrawal by withdrawal. $50,000 for his club membership, $30,000 for a luxury car he claimed was a business expense, $20,000 for a vacation he took alone, supposedly for work, $15,000 on jewelry I'd never seen, $10,000 here, $20,000 there, for dinners, for clothes, for entertaining his friends and his other women. Over $300,000 gone, spent on building the life he wanted, while telling me we needed to be careful with money, that we couldn't afford the things I wanted, that I needed to understand budgeting. But there was more. I found credit card statements for cards I didn't know existed, cards in my name, my social security number. $70,000 in debt attributed to me for purchases I never made. He'd been forging my signature, using my identity, destroying my credit while he built his image. I printed everything. Every statement, every message, every photo. I saved files to a flash drive I found in his desk drawer. I was methodical, careful, documenting every piece of evidence I could find. The sun was coming up by the time I finished. I hadn't slept. I sat at the kitchen table, the stack of papers in front of me, waiting. Brandon came home at 8 in the morning, still wearing last night's clothes. He looked surprised to see me up. "Why aren't you at work?" he asked. I slid the papers across the table. "Where's my inheritance money? Where's the $400,000 from my father?" He glanced at the papers, then at me. He didn't even flinch. He walked to the coffee maker and poured himself a cup, casual as anything. "Investments," he said, not looking at me. "They haven't performed well. Market's been rough." "Don't lie to me." I saw the bank statements. "You spent it. On yourself, on your club, on your affairs." He took a sip of coffee, still calm. "We're married. Community property. That money was as much mine as yours. You stole from me." My voice was steady, cold. "You took out credit cards in my name without telling me. That's identity theft. That's a crime." Finally, he turned to face me. His expression was flat, almost bored. "You want to make this ugly? Fine. Let's talk reality. You have zero proof of theft. We're married. I managed our finances. That's what husbands do. If you divorce me, you'll get nothing. I'll make sure of it. I have the best lawyers money can buy." He stepped closer, and I saw something dangerous in his eyes. "Your money, actually," he continued. "Those lawyers are already on retainer. And here's something else you should know. I've been documenting your behavior for months. Your mood swings, your paranoia, your inability to fit into normal social situations. I have witnesses who'll testify that you're emotionally unstable." He leaned down, his face close to mine. "You'll be lucky to leave this marriage with anything, including your reputation. You want to fight me? Try. You'll lose. You'll lose everything, and everyone will know you're crazy. That's what happens when you go after someone out of your league." He straightened up, drained his coffee, and walked out. I heard him go upstairs, heard the shower start. I sat there, the papers still on the table, understanding exactly what he'd done. He'd planned this from the beginning. Use my father's connections, use my money, build his image and his life, then discard me as mentally unfit so he could keep everything. It was brilliant, in a sociopathic way, and it was working. The next morning, I made a decision. Looking back now, I know it was the wrong one, but at the time I couldn't see any other path. I decided to fight for my marriage. I decided to become exactly what Brandon said he wanted. I took what was left in my personal checking account, about $3,000 I'd saved from my salary, and I went shopping. Not at the stores I usually frequented, but at the high-end boutiques downtown where everything had designer labels and price tags that made my stomach turn. A saleswoman at the first store looked me up and down with barely concealed disdain, taking in my jeans and casual blouse. But when I told her my budget, her demeanor changed instantly. Suddenly I was valued, important, worth her time. I bought dresses. 3 of them, each costing more than I'd ever spent on clothing in my life. I bought shoes with red soles that the saleswoman assured me were essential for making the right impression. I bought a handbag that cost more than my monthly car payment. From there, I went to an elite salon, the kind of place where you needed appointments weeks in advance, but could get in immediately if you were willing to pay extra. I told them to do whatever they needed to do. They cut my hair, styled it, dyed away the few gray strands that had appeared. They did my makeup, teaching me techniques I'd never learned. They shaped my eyebrows, did my nails, transformed me into someone I barely recognized. I looked in the mirror and saw a woman who could belong in Brandon's world. I looked expensive, polished, elegant. It cost me everything I had saved, but I told myself it was worth it. Over the next 2 weeks, I'd transformed myself completely. I signed up for etiquette classes, sitting in rooms with other women learning which fork to use for which course, how to hold a wine glass properly, how to make polite conversation without seeming too eager or too boring. I studied art history online, memorizing painters and movements so I could discuss them intelligently. I read about wine regions, about classical music, about all the cultural markers that supposedly separated the sophisticated from the common. I practiced walking in heels until my feet bled. I practiced my posture, my gestures, my smile. I made myself into what I thought Brandon wanted. He barely noticed. The first time I came downstairs in one of my new dresses, hair and makeup perfect, he glanced up from his phone for maybe 2 seconds. "That's better," he said. "Still not quite right, but better." That was it. No compliment, no acknowledgement of the effort or the cost. Just a dismissive assessment that I was slightly less embarrassing than before. But I didn't give up. I asked him if I could attend the next club event with him. He hesitated, his jaw tightening, and I could see him calculating whether my improved appearance was worth the risk of having me there. Finally, he agreed. "You can come, but don't talk too much. Let me lead all conversations. Smile, be pleasant, but don't offer opinions on anything important. Just agree with whatever I say." "Can you do that?" I told him I could. The night of the event, I dressed carefully in the most expensive of my new dresses, a black number that the saleswoman had promised was timeless and appropriate. I styled my hair exactly as the salon had shown me. I checked and rechecked my makeup. When I came downstairs, Brandon was waiting by the door. He looked me over with a critical eye, then nodded. "Acceptable. Remember what I said. Follow my lead." The drive to the Sterling Reserve took 20 minutes. Brandon spent the whole time on his phone, texting, not speaking to me. I looked out the window and tried to calm my racing heart. The club was breathtaking. I'd never seen anything like it. We walked through massive wooden doors into a marble lobby with crystal chandeliers that must have cost more than most people's houses. Oil paintings and gilded frames lined the walls. The furniture was leather and mahogany, elegant and intimidating. Everything gleamed. Everything spoke of wealth and power and exclusivity. I felt like an imposter despite my expensive dress. Everyone here moved with casual confidence, like they'd been born into this world and couldn't imagine any other way of living. Brandon put his hand on my lower back, guiding me into the main room where the event was being held. It wasn't affectionate. It was controlling, steering me like a possession. He approached a group of people, all holding crystal glasses of wine or whiskey. The men were in perfectly tailored suits. The women wore jewelry that caught the light with every movement. "Everyone, this is Lupe," Brandon said. "Not my wife, Lupe. Not I'd like you to meet Lupe. Just her name, as if I were a business associate or a distant acquaintance." The group nodded politely. One of the women, a blonde named Diane who looked to be in her early 40s, gave me a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. They resumed their conversation, discussing a recent charity gala and an upcoming trip to Napa Valley. I tried to follow along, to find an opening to contribute something intelligent. When there was a pause, I mentioned a wine region I'd read about, trying to sound knowledgeable. "I've heard the Willamette Valley is producing some interesting Pinot Noirs lately." Diane laughed, a sharp sound that made my face burn. "How quaint. You've been reading wine blogs?" The others smiled, amused. One of the men said, "The really interesting work is happening in Burgundy, of course, but I suppose Oregon is fine for beginners." Brandon's hand tightened on my back, a warning. I fell silent. The conversation moved on without me. They talked about art exhibitions I'd never heard of, about restaurants with year-long waiting lists, about their children's admissions to elite prep schools. Everything they discussed required not just money, but connections, insider knowledge, a lifetime of being part of this world. I was drowning in their casual mentions of things I'd never experienced, watching Brandon laugh at their jokes and contribute his own stories, none of which included me. After about an hour, I excused myself to use the restroom, grateful for a moment alone. The ladies' room was as elegant as the rest of the club, all marble counters and gold fixtures and plush seating areas. I stood at the sink, splashing cool water on my wrists, trying to calm down. Then I heard voices, women entering the restroom talking loudly. I was in one of the stalls, the door closed, and they didn't know I was there. I recognized Diane's voice immediately. "Did you see what Brandon brought tonight?" she said. Another woman responded, laughing. "I know. He must be desperate." "She's trying so hard," a third voice added. "That dress is nice, but you can't buy class." "I heard she's from some nowhere town in Texas," Diane said. Brandon told Marcus she grew up poor. Her father was a mechanic or something equally common. My father had been a machinist, actually. A skilled tradesman who took pride in his work. But to them, it was all the same, all equally beneath their notice. "Why is he still with her?" one of them asked. "He's waiting for the right moment," Diane replied. "You know Brandon, always strategic. He told me privately that she's just a placeholder. He's already seeing someone more suitable. Just needs to handle the divorce quietly, so she doesn't make a scene." The other women made sympathetic noises. "Poor Brandon," one said, "having to pretend while he sorts it out. They talked about me like I was a problem to be solved, an inconvenience in Brandon's otherwise successful life. They talked about me like I wasn't human." I sat frozen on the toilet seat, my hands pressed over my mouth to keep from making any sound. I waited until they left, their voices fading as they returned to the party. When I finally emerged, I looked at myself in the mirror. My makeup was still perfect. My hair was still styled. My dress was still expensive. But underneath it all, I was still just me. And to them, that would never be enough. I walked back to the event room on shaking legs. I scanned the crowd and found Brandon immediately. He was across the room, standing close to a beautiful woman with auburn hair. Too close. His hand was on her lower back, the same way he'd touched me earlier, but this touch was different. Intimate. Possessive. She laughed at something he said, touching his arm, leaning into him. He looked at her the way he used to look at me, years ago, before everything changed. I watched them for a full minute. No one else seemed to notice or care. This was normal to them, acceptable. The rules that applied to regular people didn't apply here. I found a chair and sat down, suddenly exhausted. I'd spent thousands of dollars, hundreds of hours, all this effort to transform myself into someone worthy of this world. And it didn't matter. Nothing I did would ever matter. When we finally left, well past midnight, Brandon was irritated. "You barely spoke all night. I told you to be engaging." I stared out the car window. I tried. "Not hard enough. Those people are important to my career. You made me look bad." I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell him I'd heard everything Diane said, that I'd seen him with that woman, that I knew exactly what he was doing, but I didn't. Because I was starting to understand something important. Nothing I said would change anything. He didn't want me to improve. He wanted me gone. And all my efforts to save this marriage were just delaying the inevitable while he positioned himself to take everything. That night, lying in bed while Brandon snored beside me, I made a different decision. I would stop trying to become what he wanted. Instead, I would start planning my escape. I couldn't sleep. My mind raced, replaying everything I'd heard and seen. At 3 a.m, I gave up trying. I slipped out of bed quietly, careful not to wake Brandon, and went back to his office. The laptop was where he'd left it. I opened it again, my fingers moving quickly over the keyboard. I'd already seen the messages, the photos, the evidence of his affairs. Now I needed to understand the full scope of what he'd done. I started with our financial accounts. Every bank account, every investment account, every credit card. I made spreadsheets, tracking where the money had gone. My father's $400,000 inheritance had been deposited into our joint account 5 years ago, right after he passed away. I'd been grieving, overwhelmed, and Brandon had insisted on handling everything. He said it was too much for me to deal with in my emotional state. I'd been grateful. Now I traced every transaction, every withdrawal, and the pattern became sickeningly clear. $50,000 to the Sterling Reserve, paid annually for 3 years. $150,000 gone, just for the privilege of membership. $35,000 for his luxury car, the one he'd told me was a business lease but actually owned outright. $60,000 in luxury purchases. Designer clothes, expensive watches, jewelry I'd never seen him wear. When I cross-referenced the dates with his messages, I realized he'd been buying gifts for the women he was seeing. $20,000 on a vacation to Italy he'd taken 18 months ago. He told me it was a work conference. In his messages, he described it as a romantic getaway with someone named Heather. $15,000 on dining and entertainment at restaurants I'd never been to, with people I'd never met. The list went on and on. My inheritance, the money my father had worked his entire life to save, spent on Brandon's image and his affairs. But there was more. Much more. I found credit card statements I'd never seen before. Cards in my name, with my social security number, that I'd never applied for. 7 different cards, all maxed out. $70,000 in debt, all attributed to me. I pulled my credit report, something I hadn't done in years. My score was destroyed. Late payments, high utilization, collections notices, all for accounts I didn't know existed. Brandon had been systematically ruining my financial life while building his own, and he'd done it so carefully, so methodically, that I'd never suspected until now. I printed everything. I filled a file folder with evidence, then another, then another. By the time the sun started rising, I had a complete picture of the theft. When Brandon came downstairs at 7:30, showered and dressed for work, I was waiting at the kitchen table. The folders were stacked in front of me. He saw them, and his expression flickered, just for a second, before returning to his usual mask of cool indifference. "We need to talk," I said. "I have a meeting." "Sit down, Brandon." Something in my voice made him pause. He sat, but his body language was defensive, closed off. I opened the first folder. "I know everything. I know about the money. I know you spent my inheritance. I know about the credit cards you opened in my name." He glanced at the papers, then looked at me with something like pity. "And what exactly do you think you're going to do with this information?" "I'm going to report you for fraud, for identity theft, for embezzlement." He actually laughed. "You're going to report your husband for managing your finances? Good luck with that. You stole from me. We're married. Community property. Everything you have is mine, and everything I have is yours. That's how marriage works." He stood, straightening his tie. "You want to make this into a legal battle? Fine. Let's talk about what happens then." He leaned against the counter, casual, confident. "First, you have no proof of theft. We're married. I had access to all our accounts legitimately. Any halfway decent lawyer will shut this down in 5 minutes. You forged my signature on credit applications." "Did I? You sure about that? Because I'm pretty sure you signed those applications yourself. You just don't remember. You've been under so much stress lately. Your memory isn't what it used to be." My hands clenched. "That's not true." "Isn't it? I have documentation of your erratic behavior. Mood swings, paranoia, forgetting conversations we've had. My friends have noticed. Your coworkers have noticed." "My coworkers?" "Your boss and I have had several conversations about your declining performance. He's concerned. We all are." I felt cold spreading through my chest. "What did you do?" "I'm trying to help you, Lupe, but you're not making it easy. If you divorce me, if you try to claim I've done something wrong, everyone will know you're unstable. You'll be the crazy wife making false accusations because she can't handle the end of her marriage." He picked up his briefcase, ready to leave. "I'll make sure you get nothing. The house, the cars, the savings, all of it stays with me. You'll be lucky if I don't have you committed for your own safety." He walked to the door, then turned back. "And if you think anyone will believe you over me, you're even more delusional than I thought. I have the best lawyers money can buy. I have connections, resources, credibility. What do you have? Nothing. You are nothing." The door closed behind him. I sat in the empty kitchen, those words echoing in my head. You are nothing. For a moment, I believed him. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Miss Cordero? A woman's voice, professional and kind. Yes? This is Janet from Wilson and Associates. I'm calling about your employment. My stomach dropped. What about it? I'm afraid we have to let you go, effective immediately. We'll mail your final paycheck and any unused vacation pay. You don't need to come back to the office. We'll have your personal items sent to you. I don't understand. Why? My performance reviews have always been excellent. There was a pause. I'm not at liberty to discuss the details. This decision came from senior management. I'm sorry. She hung up before I could respond. I sat there, phone in my hand, understanding exactly what had happened. Brandon had made good on his threat. He'd used his connections, probably his golf buddy relationship with my CEO, to get me fired. In one morning, I'd lost my job and learned that I had no legal recourse, no financial independence, and no credibility. An hour later, my friend Sarah texted me. We'd worked together for 4 years, had lunch together most days. Lupe, I'm so sorry about what happened. They called a meeting and told us you were no longer with the company. What's going on? I called her instead of texting back. When she answered, I asked, Do you know why I was fired? Sarah hesitated. I probably shouldn't tell you this. Please. Brandon called Mr. Wilson. They play golf together, apparently. Brandon told him you're having some kind of breakdown, that you're making wild accusations, that you need to be let go before you cause problems for the company. Mr. Wilson didn't even question it. He just agreed. Did anyone defend me? A few people tried. But Mr. Wilson said Brandon was looking out for your best interests, that sometimes family has to make hard decisions. I'm so sorry, Lupe. This isn't fair. After we hung up, I looked around my house. My beautiful house that Brandon had insisted we buy, that was in both our names but that he'd now claim as his own. I had no job, no income. My inheritance was gone. My credit was destroyed. My husband had isolated me, stolen from me, and positioned himself as the concerned spouse, trying to help his mentally unstable wife. He'd cut off every avenue of escape. I went to my computer and searched for lawyers, family law attorneys who might take my case. I called 5 different offices. 3 didn't return my calls. 2 agreed to consultations, but when I explained I had no money for a retainer, they politely declined. Legal aid might be able to help, one suggested. But they have a 6-month waiting list. 6 months. I didn't have 6 months. That afternoon, I tried to open a new bank account in just my name, thinking I could at least separate whatever money I earned from Brandon's access. But when the bank ran my credit check, they denied me. My score was too low. The fraudulent accounts had destroyed any chance of financial independence. I went home and found Brandon's car in the driveway. He was home early. When I walked in, he was in the kitchen, making himself a sandwich. Heard you had a tough day, he said, not looking at me. I didn't respond. You brought this on yourself, you know. If you'd just accepted your place, none of this would have happened. My place? You're not sophisticated enough for my world. I told you that from the beginning. You should have stayed in your lane. He took a bite of his sandwich, chewing slowly. Now look at you. No job. No money. No options. What are you going to do, Lupe? Where are you going to go? I realized he was enjoying this. He'd systematically destroyed every part of my life, and he was savoring my defeat. I want a divorce, I said quietly. He smiled. Sure, file whenever you want. But remember what I told you. You'll get nothing, and everyone will know you're crazy. Is that really what you want? That night, I lay awake while Brandon slept beside me, snoring peacefully like he didn't have a care in the world. I thought about my father, about the money he'd saved so carefully, dollar by dollar, wanting to give me security. I thought about the woman I used to be, confident, and capable, before Brandon spent 6 years tearing me down. I thought about ending things. Not my marriage, but everything. It felt like the only escape from the trap he'd built. But something in me refused to give him that satisfaction. Some stubborn, angry part of me that wouldn't let him win. I just didn't know how to fight back. I had nothing. He'd made sure of it. And then, at 2 in the morning, my phone rang. I grabbed my phone quickly, before the ringing could wake Brandon. Unknown number again. Who called at 2 in the morning? Hello? I whispered, walking out of the bedroom into the hallway. Miss Cordero? Lupe Cordero? Yes. Who is this? My name is Patricia Hammond. I'm an attorney with Hammond and Associates. I've been trying to reach you for several weeks. I don't understand. Why would you be calling me? I represent your maternal grandmother's estate, Evelyn Hartfield? I stopped walking. My grandmother? I barely remembered her. My mother had been estranged from her family. I'd met my grandmother maybe twice in my life, both times when I was very young. After my mother died when I was 7, I'd lost all contact with that side of the family. Yes, Patricia continued. Miss Hartfield passed away 3 months ago. Her will names you as her sole beneficiary. The hallway seemed to tilt. I don't understand. Your grandmother left you everything. Her estate is quite substantial. I've been trying to notify you, but your mail has apparently been intercepted. I finally tracked down your former employer, who gave me this phone number. How substantial? My voice was barely a whisper. The estate is valued at approximately $2.3 million. I sat down on the floor, my back against the wall. $2.3 million. Miss Cordero, are you there? Yes, I'm here. I just need a moment. Patricia's voice was kind. I understand this is a shock. Would you be able to meet with me tomorrow to discuss the details? Yes, absolutely. What time? We arranged a meeting for 10 in the morning at her office. After I hung up, I sat in that dark hallway for a long time, trying to process what I'd just heard. Money. Real money. Enough to escape, to fight back, to rebuild my life. But I couldn't let Brandon know. If he found out, he'd find a way to take this too. I was sure of it. The next morning, I told Brandon I was going to look for work. He barely looked up from his phone. Good luck with that. Patricia's office was in a high-rise downtown, sleek and modern. She was a woman in her late 50s with sharp eyes and a firm handshake. When I sat across from her desk, she studied me carefully. Tell me about your situation, she said. What do you mean? You look terrified. Your hands are shaking, and when you walked in, you checked over your shoulder 3 times. What's going on? I hadn't planned to tell her everything, but something about her direct gaze made me feel safe. So I did. I told her about Brandon, about the stolen inheritance, about the credit cards, about being fired, about his threats. Patricia listened without interrupting. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. Your grandmother's estate is yours, she said firmly. It's your inheritance, received during marriage but protected under Texas law as separate property. Your husband has no legal claim to it. But you need to be strategic. What do you mean? Don't tell him. Not yet. We'll set up accounts in your name only, at a different bank. We'll move the money there, make it completely inaccessible to him. Then we build your case. I can't afford a lawyer. I tried to find someone, and they all wanted retainers I couldn't pay. Patricia smiled. You can afford me now. And I'm very good at what I do. I've been handling family law for 30 years. Men like your husband think they're untouchable. They think money and connections make them invincible. I enjoy proving them wrong. Over the next 2 hours, we made a plan. Patricia would handle my divorce, but we wouldn't file immediately. We'd let Brandon think he'd won, let him get comfortable, let him make mistakes. Men like him always get arrogant, Patricia said. They overplay their hand. When he does, we'll be ready. I left her office feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. The inheritance was transferred to new accounts. I met with financial advisors who helped me understand exactly what I had. $2.3 million invested conservatively would generate enough income to live on comfortably for the rest of my life. Invested smartly, it could grow substantially. But I didn't just want to survive. I wanted justice. I hired a private investigator, a former police detective named Marcus Taylor. I paid him $20,000 up front to dig into everything Brandon had been doing. I need documentation, I told him. Everything. His affairs, his spending, his fraud. I need it to be airtight. Marcus got to work immediately. Over the next 3 weeks, Brandon's behavior got worse. He stopped coming home most nights. When he did come home, he was openly cruel. He told me I needed to move out, that the house was his, that I was embarrassing him by still being there. One night, he brought Ashley home. The auburn-haired woman I'd seen him with at the club. He introduced her as his girlfriend, right there in our living room, like I was a roommate instead of his wife. Lupe will be leaving soon, he told Ashley, his arm around her waist. She's finally accepting reality. Ashley looked uncomfortable. Brandon, maybe this isn't the right time. It's fine. She knows it's over. Don't you, Lupe? I looked at him, at his smug face, and I almost told him everything. Almost told him I knew about the inheritance theft, about the credit fraud, about his upcoming destruction. But I remembered Patricia's advice. Let him think he's won. So I nodded. Yes, I'll be gone soon. He smiled, victorious. See? She's being reasonable. That night, I slept in the guest room. The next morning, I met with Marcus Taylor at a coffee shop across town. He slid a folder across the table to me. You're going to want to read this. Inside were photos. Brandon with Ashley, checking into hotels. Brandon with 2 other women, different occasions, same intimate behavior. Bank statements showing payments to these women. Expensive gifts charged to credit cards. But there was more. Your husband has been embezzling from his own firm, Marcus said. He bills personal expenses as business costs. Thousands of dollars a month. I have documentation going back 2 years. His partners don't know? Not yet, but they will. I made copies for them too. I looked through the evidence. It was damning, comprehensive, perfect. There's something else, Marcus said. Something interesting about the Sterling Reserve. What about it? It's privately owned. Not by a corporation, but by a single person. Old guy named Richard Hartley. He's 92, in declining health. His kids don't want to run the place. Why does that matter? Because it's for sale, quietly. $3.8 million. I sat back, my mind racing. That's more than I have. Not by much. And you might be able to negotiate. But here's what I'm thinking. That club is everything to your husband. His identity, his status, his whole world revolves around being a member there. What if you took that away from him? The idea was audacious. Impossible. Perfect. Let me think about it, I said. That night, I couldn't sleep again. I kept thinking about Brandon, about his cruelty, about the way he'd dismissed me as too plain, too common, too beneath him. And I thought about the Sterling Reserve, that beautiful building where he felt powerful and important, where he paraded his affairs and mocked his wife to his friends. What if I owned it? What if I controlled the one thing he valued most? I started making calls. I reached out to 3 women whose names had come up in Marcus's investigation. Women whose husbands were members of the Sterling Reserve. Women who'd been cheated on, dismissed, belittled by the same men who were Brandon's closest friends. I met with them separately, carefully. I told them what I was planning. I asked if they wanted to be part of it. All 3 said yes immediately. Jennifer's husband had gambled away their savings at the club's poker nights. She had family money he couldn't touch, and she wanted revenge. Angela's husband had humiliated her publicly at a club event, announcing their separation in front of everyone while his mistress sat at his table. She had a trust fund worth millions. Carolyn's husband had used her business connections to advance his career, then divorced her and married his secretary. She'd kept most of her wealth in the settlement and was looking for a way to make him regret everything. Together, we formed an LLC. I contributed $1.8 million. Jennifer put in $1 million. Angela and Carolyn each contributed $500,000. We had $3.8 million exactly. We made an offer to Richard Hartley through a law firm, keeping our identities confidential. Richard, tired and ready to be done with the business, accepted within 48 hours. The sale would be finalized in 2 weeks. Richard agreed to delay any public announcement until we were ready. In the meantime, Brandon's behavior became more brazen. He told me he was filing for divorce the following week. He was generous enough to let me keep the car and some furniture, he said mockingly. I played my part. I cried. I begged him to reconsider. I told him I had nowhere to go, no money, no options. He laughed at me. You should have thought about that before you got above yourself. You were never good enough for this world, Lupe. I tried to tell you nicely, but you wouldn't listen. Please, Brandon. I'll do anything. It's too late. I'm with Ashley now. She understands my lifestyle. She fits in. You never did. He actually patted my head, like I was a dog. You'll be fine. Get a job, find a nice little apartment somewhere, date someone more your speed. Someone who works with their hands, maybe. That's more appropriate for you. While he was gloating, Patricia filed divorce papers first. Brandon was served at his office by a process server. The papers cited adultery, fraud, identity theft, and embezzlement. He came home that evening, the papers in his hand, his face red with rage. You filed? With what money? What lawyer? I looked at him calmly. I found a way. I'll destroy you in court. You'll have nothing. Nothing! We'll see. What does that mean? I smiled. It means you're not as smart as you think you are, Brandon, and you're about to find out exactly how not smart you are. He threw the papers at me and left, slamming the door so hard the house shook. The next week moved quickly. Marcus delivered his evidence to Brandon's business partners. They immediately suspended him and launched an internal investigation. His embezzlement was confirmed within days. Brandon tried calling me, texting me, demanding to know what I'd done. I didn't answer. The Sterling Reserve sale finalized on a Wednesday. We owned it. Patricia, Jennifer, Angela, Carolyn, and I stood in Richard's office as he signed the final papers. It's a good club, Richard said, his hand shaking slightly with age. Lot of history there. But it needs fresh leadership. Some of the members have gotten too comfortable, think the rules don't apply to them. You ladies will be good for it. We thanked him and left with the keys, the codes, the accounts, everything. The monthly gala was scheduled for Saturday night. Brandon was planning to attend, to introduce Ashley officially to the club as his fiancée. He'd told his friends I was finally out of the picture, that he was free. He had no idea what was waiting for him. The 3 days between taking ownership of the Sterling Reserve and the gala were a whirlwind. Jennifer, Angela, Carolyn, and I met at the club every day, reviewing membership files, studying the layout, planning every detail of Saturday night. The club manager, a professional woman named Helen who'd worked there for 15 years, was relieved by the ownership change. Mr. Hartley was a good man, she said, but he stopped paying attention years ago. Some members have been taking advantage, breaking rules, treating staff poorly. It'll be nice to have owners who care again. We learned that several members were behind on their dues. Brandon was one of them. He owed $30,000 from the past 6 months, apparently believing his status made him exempt from payment requirements. He's not the only one, Helen said. About a dozen members think the rules don't apply to them. They're the worst to deal with. Rude to staff, dismissive of policies, always demanding special treatment. I reviewed the list. Brandon's closest friends were on it. The same men who'd mocked me, who'd encouraged his affairs, who'd helped him build his persona as a successful bachelor. We're making some changes, I told Helen, starting Saturday night. We spent Wednesday reviewing the club's policies and bylaws. There were clear rules about conduct, about respect for staff, about financial obligations, rules that hadn't been enforced in years. That changes now, Jennifer said. She'd been a corporate lawyer before her marriage, and she knew exactly how to structure what we were planning. Thursday, we met with security. We hired 3 additional guards for the gala, all highly professional, all briefed on what might happen. Friday, I went shopping with Angela. Real shopping this time, not the desperate transformation attempt I'd made weeks ago. We chose gowns because we wanted to, because they made us feel powerful, not because we were trying to prove anything to anyone. I found a dress in deep emerald green, elegant and striking. When I tried it on, I barely recognized myself. Not because I looked different, but because I felt different. Strong. Ready. You look like you're about to declare war, Angela said, smiling. I am. Friday evening, Patricia called. The investigation into Brandon's fraud is moving forward. The district attorney is interested. Your documentation was very thorough. When will charges be filed? Could be as soon as next week. They're building a case. Between the identity theft, the embezzlement from his firm, and the financial fraud, he's looking at serious prison time if convicted. Good. Lupe, Patricia said carefully, are you sure you want to go through with tomorrow night? You could just let the legal system handle this. I'm sure. He's going to be humiliated. Publicly. Yes, he is. Patricia was quiet for a moment. Okay then. I'll be there to watch. Saturday morning, I woke up early. I'd barely slept, too wired with anticipation. I went for a run, trying to burn off nervous energy. When I got back, I showered and started getting ready. My phone buzzed with texts from the others. Everyone was ready. Everyone knew their role. At 4 p.m, I drove to the Sterling Reserve. Helen had already set up the main dining hall for the gala. Crystal and china gleamed on white tablecloths. The chandeliers sparkled. Everything looked perfect. I went to the owner's office, the one that was now mine, and changed into my dress. I did my own hair and makeup, taking my time, making sure everything was right. At 5:30, Jennifer, Angela, and Carolyn arrived. They looked stunning, powerful, ready. How are you feeling? Jennifer asked. Terrified. Excited. Ready. He has no idea what's coming, Carolyn said, grinning. At 6, guests started arriving. Helen checked them in, everything running smoothly. I watched from the office, on the security cameras we'd had upgraded earlier in the week. I saw familiar faces from the night I'd attended. Diane, looking elegant in a silver gown. Marcus, Brandon's friend, with his wife, who had no idea about his offshore accounts. Stephen, who'd made the joke about Oregon wine. At 6:30, Brandon arrived with Ashley. She wore a white dress, nearly bridal, probably intentionally. Brandon was in a tuxedo, looking confident and successful. He laughed with the valet, tipped generously, put his arm around Ashley's waist as they walked inside. I watched him greet his friends, accept their congratulations, introduce Ashley proudly. She smiled and chatted, seeming nice enough. I almost felt bad for her. Almost. At 7, dinner was served. Everyone took their seats. The noise of conversation and laughter filled the hall. Brandon was at a prominent table near the front, exactly where I knew he'd be. His back was to the small stage where announcements were typically made. At 7:30, Helen dimmed the lights slightly and brought a microphone to the center of the stage. This was normal for galas. Usually someone made announcements, thanked donors, discussed club business. Tonight would be different. I stood in the wings, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Jennifer squeezed my hand. "You've got this." I walked onto the stage. The room didn't go silent immediately. People were still eating, still talking. But gradually, the conversation died down as they noticed someone new standing at the microphone. Brandon saw me. I watched his face change, from confusion to recognition to horror. He half stood from his chair, his mouth opening. I took the microphone. My hands were steady, my voice was clear. "Good evening, everyone." Now the room was completely silent. For those who don't know me, my name is Lupe Cordero. Soon to be Lupe Brennan again. I'm reclaiming my maiden name. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. At his table, Brandon had gone white. Ashley looked confused, glancing between him and me. I continued. "I'm here tonight to introduce myself properly. You see, 2 weeks ago, my partners and I purchased the Sterling Reserve from Richard Hartley. As of today, I am the majority owner and managing director of this club." The room erupted. People turned to each other, talking rapidly. Brandon was fully standing now, his napkin fallen to the floor. "That's impossible," someone shouted. "It's not," I said calmly. "Helen, would you please confirm?" Helen stepped forward. "It's true. Miss Brennan and her partners are the new owners. All paperwork is filed and legal." I waited for the noise to die down before continuing. "I've spent the last week reviewing the club's operations, its membership roster, and its values. This institution was built on principles of integrity, professional excellence, and mutual respect. Unfortunately, some members have not upheld these standards." I looked directly at Brandon. His face was red now, anger replacing shock. "Some members have used this club as a venue for infidelity, while lying about their marital status. Some have defrauded their business partners. Some have stolen from their spouses. Some haven't paid their dues in months, believing their status exempts them from rules." Brandon moved toward the stage. Security stepped in, blocking his path. I'd prepared for this. "Brandon Cordero," I said into the microphone. "Your membership is revoked, effective immediately." "You can't do this!" he shouted. "I absolutely can. As owner, I have final say on membership. You've violated multiple club policies. You're $30,000 behind on your dues. And frankly, you don't represent the values we want to promote here." I nodded to security. 2 guards moved toward Brandon's table. "But I'm not done," I said. "I've also shared certain financial documents with the district attorney's office and with your firm's partners. Documents showing embezzlement, fraud, and identity theft. I believe you'll be hearing from them very soon." Brandon lunged toward the stage, but security caught him. He was shouting, red-faced and furious. "You vindictive witch! I'll sue you for everything. This is defamation. This is harassment." "It's the truth," I said calmly. "Every word is documented. My lawyers have everything." Ashley had stood up, backing away from the table, clearly wanting nothing to do with what was happening. I turned to address the rest of the room. "For everyone else, welcome to the new Sterling Reserve. We'll be implementing new policies focused on genuine character, not just wealth. Membership will require references attesting to ethical behavior in both business and personal life. Those who don't meet our standards will be asked to leave. We'll be reviewing all current memberships over the next month." Several of Brandon's friends stood up, trying to leave in solidarity. I recognized them from the list Helen had shown me. "Diane," I said. "Marcus. Stephen. I'd sit back down if I were you." They froze. "You see, my private investigator has been very thorough. Diane, your charity foundation has some interesting accounting discrepancies. The IRS is very interested in where those donations are actually going. Marcus, those offshore accounts? The ones you use to hide income from your wife and the government? Also very interesting to the IRS. Stephen, insider trading violations are serious crimes. The SEC would love to talk to you. One by one, they sat back down. The power dynamic had shifted completely, and everyone in the room could feel it. Jennifer, Angela, and Carolyn joined me on the stage. We stood together, 4 women who'd been dismissed, mocked, and underestimated by these men. The Sterling Reserve has a new direction, Jennifer said. We're keeping the standards of excellence, but adding something that's been missing, actual excellence of character. Security was escorting Brandon out now. He was still shouting, but his voice was getting fainter. Through the windows, I could see police cars pulling up. Patricia had timed it perfectly. Brandon was being arrested right there, in front of the club he loved, in front of all the people he'd tried to impress. He saw me watching from the stage. Our eyes met through the window. In that moment, he understood exactly what had happened. The wife he'd dismissed as too plain, too common, too beneath him, had destroyed everything he valued. I felt nothing. Not triumph, not satisfaction, not even anger. Just a sense of something completed. Ashley was crying at the table, abandoned. A few people tried to comfort her. I actually did feel bad for her. She'd been used, just like I had been. The rest of the gala continued, believe it or not. After the initial shock, people started eating again, talking in hushed voices. Some came up to congratulate us. Others left early, clearly uncomfortable. Helen came to the stage. That went better than expected. Really? I asked. Oh yes. No property damage, no injuries, just one arrest. I'd call that a success. The aftermath of the gala moved faster than I'd anticipated. By Sunday morning, the story had spread through every wealthy circle in the city. The dramatic takeover of the Sterling Reserve. Brandon's arrest. The 4 women who'd banded together to reclaim power from the men who'd wronged them. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Reporters wanted interviews. Other women wanted to share their stories. Some of Brandon's former friends called, angry and threatening. I blocked their numbers. Patricia called Sunday afternoon. The district attorney filed formal charges this morning. Identity theft, embezzlement, financial fraud. Brandon's bail was set at $250,000. He can't make it. What happens now? He sits in jail until his arraignment on Tuesday. His firm officially terminated him this morning. His assets are being frozen, pending the outcome of the case. And Ashley left him. Apparently, she had no idea he was actually married. She's talking about pressing charges for fraud herself. I felt a grim satisfaction. Good. Lupe, Patricia said carefully. I need to ask, how do you feel? Really? I thought about it. Empty, mostly. I thought I'd feel triumphant, but mostly I just feel tired. That's normal. Revenge fantasies are always more satisfying than revenge reality. The real work starts now. She was right. Over the next week, Jennifer, Angela, Carolyn, and I threw ourselves into transforming the Sterling Reserve. We interviewed every staff member, learning about their experiences, their concerns, their ideas for improvement. We discovered systematic mistreatment. Members who'd been verbally abusive to servers. Members who'd groped waitresses and bartenders. Members who'd made racist comments to the kitchen staff. All of it had been tolerated because these men were wealthy, because Richard Hartley was too old and tired to deal with it, because that's how things had always been. That ends now, Angela said firmly. We implemented a zero-tolerance policy. Mistreat staff once, get a warning. Do it again, lose your membership permanently. We reviewed all current memberships, 62 members total. We found 12 who were significantly behind on dues, 7 who had documented complaints from staff, 5 who were under investigation for financial crimes. We sent termination letters to all of them. The response was immediate and angry. Lawyers called, threatening lawsuits. Some men showed up at the club, demanding to speak to the owner. I met with each of them personally, sat across from them in my office, and listened to their outrage, their disbelief that someone like me could hold power over them. "You're making a huge mistake," one man told me. "I have connections. I can destroy your reputation." "Try," I said calmly. "But you're still not getting your membership back." Only one apologized. A man named David, who'd been rude to servers multiple times. "I was going through a divorce," he said. "I was angry, and I took it out on people who didn't deserve it. I'm genuinely sorry. I understand why you're terminating my membership. I just wanted you to know I regret my behavior." I studied him. He seemed sincere. Complete 20 hours of community service at a food bank or homeless shelter. Get a reference from the supervisor attesting to your respectful behavior, then reapply. "We'll consider it." He actually teared up. "Thank you. I will. I promise." We started accepting new membership applications immediately. We advertised differently, focusing on character and community contribution rather than just wealth. The response was overwhelming. Young professionals applied. Successful small business owners. People who'd built their careers through hard work rather than family connections. The diversity of applicants was refreshing. We interviewed every candidate personally. We checked references thoroughly. We made it clear that membership was a privilege, not a right, and could be revoked at any time for conduct violations. By the end of the first month, we'd replaced all 12 terminated members with new ones. The atmosphere at the club changed dramatically. People were kinder, more genuine. The staff seemed happier, more relaxed. Helen pulled me aside one evening. "This is what it should have been all along. Thank you." Meanwhile, Brandon's legal troubles mounted. His trial was scheduled for 6 months out, but the preliminary hearings weren't going well for him. The evidence was overwhelming. His own firm's partners were testifying against him. His bank records were damning. He tried to negotiate with me through his lawyer. He'd drop the divorce contest, sign whatever I wanted, if I'd withdraw my complaints and testimony. Patricia laughed when she told me. "What did you say?" I said no. He faces the consequences of his choices. Good. Because honestly, your testimony is the least of his problems. His firm's evidence alone is enough to convict him. The divorce proceeded quickly once Brandon stopped fighting it. I got the house. He kept his car and personal items, but everything else was mine or sold to pay his legal fees. I moved back into our house briefly, but it felt wrong. Too many bad memories. I put it on the market, and it sold within a week. I bought a smaller place closer to the club, something that felt like mine. 3 months after the gala, on a Tuesday afternoon, I was working in my office at the club when Helen called up. "Someone here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she seems upset. Send her up." A young woman entered my office, maybe 25, dressed professionally, but her eyes were red from crying. "Miss Brennan? I'm sorry to just show up like this. My name is Emma." "It's fine. Please sit. What can I do for you?" She sat down, clutching her purse. "I read about what you did, with your husband, with the club. Everyone's been talking about it, and I need help." Over the next hour, she told me her story. Her husband was financially abusive. He controlled all their money, gave her an allowance like she was a child, criticized everything she bought. He'd convinced her family she was irresponsible with money, that he was protecting her from herself. "I have a good job," she said. "I make $60,000 a year, but I never see any of it. He deposits my paychecks into his account. He says it's for our future, but I know he's spending it on himself. I have $20 in my purse right now. That's it. Have you talked to a lawyer? I can't afford one. I don't have access to money. And I'm scared. He's not violent, but he's controlling. He tracks my phone, my car, everything. He'll know if I try to leave. I thought about my own experience, about how trapped I'd felt, how hopeless. I'm going to help you, I said. I connected Emma with Patricia, who agreed to take her case pro bono. I helped her open a new bank account at a different institution, one her husband didn't know about. I redirected her next paycheck to that account. I gave her information about domestic abuse resources because financial abuse was domestic abuse. You're not alone, I told her. And you're not crazy or irresponsible or any of the things he's told you. You're smart and capable and you deserve better. She cried in my office, relieved and grateful. Why are you helping me? You don't even know me. Because someone helped me when I needed it. And because no one should have to stay in a situation like that. After Emma left, I sat in my office thinking. This wasn't the first time someone had reached out. Over the past 3 months, at least a dozen women had contacted me, sharing their own stories of financial abuse, of controlling partners, of feeling trapped. I called Jennifer, Angela, and Carolyn. I want to start a foundation. We met that evening at the club, brainstorming. By midnight, we had a plan. The Brennan Foundation for Financial Independence. We'd provide legal assistance, financial counseling, and emergency funds to women escaping financially abusive relationships. We'd fund it ourselves initially, then seek additional donors. This is bigger than revenge, Jennifer said. This is about actually changing things. We launched the foundation 2 months later. The response was overwhelming. Women came forward with their stories. Some needed lawyers, some needed safe places to stay. Some just needed someone to believe them. We helped 30 women in the first month alone. Brandon's trial started on a cold morning in November. I attended every day, sitting in the back of the courtroom. He looked diminished, wearing an ill-fitting suit, his confidence gone. The prosecution presented their case methodically. The identity theft, the forged signatures, the embezzlement from his firm. His own partners testified against him, describing how he'd stolen from them. When I testified, Brandon wouldn't look at me. I described the stolen inheritance, the fraudulent credit cards, his systematic destruction of my finances. Why didn't you report this sooner? His defense attorney asked. Because he convinced me I couldn't. He made me believe I was the problem, that I was crazy, that no one would believe me. That's what abuse does. It makes you doubt your own reality. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. They found him guilty on all counts. Sentencing was 2 weeks later. The judge gave him 7 years in prison, with possibility of parole after 4. Mr. Cordero, the judge said, you systematically destroyed your wife's life for your own benefit. You stole from her, from your colleagues, from everyone who trusted you. You showed no remorse, no recognition of the harm you caused. This sentence reflects the seriousness of your crimes. Brandon was led away in handcuffs. I felt nothing watching him go. No satisfaction, no triumph. He was irrelevant to me now. 6 months after Brandon's sentencing, I sat in my office at the Sterling Reserve on a quiet afternoon. The club had transformed in ways I couldn't have imagined. We'd won an award for workplace excellence after our staff nominated us. Membership was at capacity with a waiting list for the first time in years. The atmosphere was warm, welcoming, genuinely respectful. Sarah, my friend from my old job, was meeting me for coffee. She'd joined the club 2 months ago after her own career advancement. She walked in, smiling, and sat across from my desk. This place is incredible, she said. I've been to 3 networking events here, and the conversations are so different from other business clubs. People actually help each other. They share opportunities. It's not just about showing off. That was the goal, I said. To create something real. You know, Sarah said, stirring sugar into her coffee. When I first heard what happened with Brandon, with you taking over the club and everything, I thought you'd become bitter. I worried the whole experience had hardened you. But you haven't. You've become something better. You've become powerful in a way that actually matters. I shook my head. Not powerful, free. And that was the truth of it. Somewhere along this journey, I'd stopped caring about revenge and started caring about purpose. I thought about the girl I'd been, standing in that bedroom 6 months ago, accepting Brandon's cruel assessment of my worth. I'd spent so long believing his view of me, internalizing his criticisms, trying to mold myself into someone he'd approve of. I learned something important through all this, I told Sarah. When someone tries to make you feel small, it's because they feel small inside. Brandon needed me to be beneath him because deep down he knew I never was. His cruelty was his weakness, not mine. That's profound. It's true. The truth is, elegance isn't about designer clothes or knowing which wine pairs with fish. Real elegance is treating people with dignity. It's having integrity, even when no one's watching. It's standing up when you've been knocked down. Brandon never understood that. He thought money and status made him superior, but in the end, he had nothing real, no character, no honor, no one who actually loved him. I looked around my office, at the photos on the walls showing club events, charity fundraisers, networking sessions. The Sterling Reserve had become something meaningful, a place where people built genuine connections and helped each other succeed. I used to think I needed to change to fit into his world, I continued. But the truth was, his world was empty. I didn't need to rise to his level. He needed to rise to mine. He never could. Sarah reached across the desk and squeezed my hand. Your dad would be so proud of you. The mention of my father made my eyes sting. I hope so. He worked so hard to leave me that inheritance, and Brandon stole it. But then my grandmother, who I barely knew, gave me something even more valuable. Not just money, but the chance to rebuild, to become who I was supposed to be. Do you ever see Brandon? Hear about him? He's in prison. He'll be there for at least 3 more years. I don't think about him much anymore. He's just not relevant to my life. And that was the real victory. Not the club, not the money, not even the legal justice. The real victory was that Brandon Cordero had no power over me anymore. He was a chapter in my story, but not the whole book. Over the next hour, Sarah and I talked about her career, her goals, the projects she was working on. Before she left, she asked about the foundation. We've helped 87 women so far, I told her. Some just needed legal advice. Others needed emergency funds to escape dangerous situations. A few needed job placement help. We're expanding next year, opening a resource center with financial counseling and career services. That's amazing. It's necessary. So many women are trapped in situations like I was. They need to know there's a way out. After Sarah left, I had a meeting with a young woman named Brittany, who was applying for club membership. She was 28, owned a small but growing marketing firm, and came highly recommended by 3 current members. Why do you want to join the Sterling Reserve? I asked. Honestly, because it's the only business club I've researched that actually lives its values. I've been to other places where everyone's just trying to one-up each other, where it's all about ego and showing off. Here, people seem genuinely interested in mutual success. That's what we're trying to build. Can I ask you something? Brittany leaned forward slightly. Is it true what they say about what you did to your ex-husband? I'd been asked this question many times. I always answered honestly. Yes, he stole from me, abused me financially and emotionally, and tried to destroy my life. So, I fought back. I documented everything, built a case, and made sure he faced consequences. Good, Brittany said firmly. My sister went through something similar. Her husband cleaned out their accounts and left her with nothing. She was too scared to fight back. I wish she'd had someone like you to show her it was possible. Tell her to call the Brennan Foundation. We can help. Brittany's eyes widened. Really? Really. That's what we're here for. We approved Brittany's membership that afternoon. She joined a community of professionals who were building something real, something based on character, instead of just wealth. That evening, I attended a foundation fundraiser at the club. Over 200 people attended, raising $370,000 for our work. Women shared their stories of escape, of rebuilding, of reclaiming their lives. One woman, Maria, stood at the microphone and described leaving her abusive husband with 3 children and $73. The foundation had provided her with legal representation, childcare assistance, and job training. She was now a licensed electrician, earning a good living, independent, and safe. "The Brennan Foundation saved my life," she said, tears streaming down her face. "They believed me when no one else did. They helped me when I had nothing. I'm here today because someone cared enough to fight for women like me." The applause was thunderous. I stood in the back, watching, feeling that strange mixture of pride and humility. Jennifer found me in the crowd. "You did this," she said. "We did this. All 4 of us. No, this was your vision, your experience, your courage. We just helped make it happen." Later that night, driving home through the city, I passed the street where Brandon and I used to live. The house we'd shared was dark, the new owners probably asleep. I felt no nostalgia, no sadness, just distance. I thought about what revenge had taught me, that it wasn't about destruction. Real revenge was building something better than what they took from you. Real revenge was refusing to let cruelty define you. Brandon had tried to make me small. Instead, I became larger than he could imagine. He'd tried to take everything from me. Instead, I built an empire of support for women who needed it. One afternoon the following week, a young woman approached me nervously after a foundation event. She couldn't have been more than 22, wearing clothes that were clearly her nicest but not expensive. "Miss Brennan? I just became a member of the Sterling Reserve. I still can't believe I'm allowed to be here. My ex-boyfriend used to tell me I'd never amount to anything, that I didn't belong in professional spaces." I recognized that pain in her eyes. I'd seen it in my own mirror not so long ago. "You belong anywhere you want to be," I told her firmly. "Don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise." Her eyes filled with tears. "He made me believe I was worthless." I took her hand. "Then he was wrong. And now you're here, succeeding despite him. That's the best response to cruelty. Keep becoming more yourself." She hugged me, suddenly, fiercely. When she pulled back, she was smiling through her tears. "Thank you. You have no idea what this means." But I did know. I knew exactly what it meant. As she walked away, confidence growing with each step, I realized this was my purpose now. Not punishing those who'd hurt me, but empowering those who'd been hurt. I thought back to that moment in my bedroom, the moment Brandon told me to stay in my lane. I had stayed in my lane, but my lane, it turned out, was a highway, and his was a dead end. The transformation had been painful. There were days I'd wanted to give up, days I'd believed his assessment of my worth. But I'd fought through it, learned who I really was beneath his criticism, and built something meaningful from the ashes of my old life. People say living well is the best revenge. But I'd learned something more important. Living authentically is the best freedom. I didn't need revenge anymore. I had something far more valuable than that. I had myself back. My confidence, my strength, my sense of purpose. No one would ever take those things from me again. The woman Brandon dismissed as too plain, too common, too beneath him, had become the most influential person in his former social circle. Not by changing who I was, but by refusing to accept his definition of who I should be. And every single day, that was its own quiet, perfect triumph. Sometimes I still saw him around town. He'd been released after serving 3 years, looking older, diminished, working a sales job to pay his restitution. He'd glare at me across parking lots, across streets, his face twisted with impotent anger. I felt nothing looking at him. He was a stranger. Someone I used to know. Someone who'd hurt me terribly, but someone who had no power over me anymore. The Sterling Reserve thrived. The foundation grew. Women found their strength and rebuilt their lives. And I got to witness it all, to be part of their journeys, to show them what was possible. That was the real ending to my story. Not revenge, not destruction, but creation. Building something better than what was destroyed. Becoming someone stronger than the person who tried to break me. I'd learned that you can't make someone value you, but you can value yourself. And once you do that truly, completely, their opinions become background noise. Brandon had tried to convince me I was worthless. Instead, I discovered my worth was beyond his comprehension. He'd tried to keep me small. Instead, I became exactly as large as I chose to be, and that, more than any revenge, was the sweetest victory of all. What about you? Have you ever felt dismissed or underestimated by someone who was supposed to support you? How did you find your strength? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Your experience might inspire someone else who's going through something similar. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about resilience, justice, and finding your power. Share this with someone who needs to hear that they're stronger than they know. Thank you for listening to my story. Remember, you're never too plain, too common, or too anything for the life you deserve. Anyone who tries to make you feel small is revealing their own inadequacy, not yours. Stay strong, stay authentic, and never let anyone define your worth but you.